Hello, everybody, and welcome to the special 2021 Snowpocalypse edition of the Swim Brief. Joining us from the unexpectedly frozen hellscape of the Houston, Texas area. We won't get too specific about where you are, Erik, because we don't want any fans harassing you in your house, the rabid fans of the Thursday podcast. But
or the neighbors know that you have the temperature up above 53.
Yeah. You've been dealing with some inclement weather in a part of the country where that's not usually the type of inclement weather that you have to deal with. But you got power back this morning, yeah?
Sometime around midnight, 1 o'clock. Was out for probably about 16 hours, maybe. So I'm one of the more fortunate ones. A lot of people in the Austin area, other parts have been without power since Sunday. So very fortunate to be able to be on this podcast as long as the internet holds up.
Man, if you're one of the fortunate ones, Houston must really be screwed.
Yeah. There was one point yesterday, there was 1.3 million households without power.
Unbelievable. And I have a snowstorm raging outside. I'm the only person here in Jersey Wahoo's Central. Probably will be the only person in this building because I commuted down last night. And it looks like we're maybe getting 8 to 10 inches. So probably going to be leaving at some point during the day to escape and make sure I make it home safely. Joining us from, I guess, the one place in America where it's not snowing.
It stopped, yeah.
Joel Robbins, former Division III swim coach, has only coached one Division III national champion. He's often mistaken for Norm Macdonald, but not funny. Like
the unfunny version.
Poor man's Norm Macdonald.
I believe it.
How are you, Joel?
It's already the best compliment I've had all day, so I'm doing great.
Great. So, guys, I brought you on. We got two topics today. We got one, I guess, less fun topic, and we got one more fun topic. I want to talk about what's going on in Iowa. Earlier in the week, they got their women's team reinstated. And it's a really interesting situation because there's perhaps never been a group of alumni that are more upset about a reinstatement. And we'll get into some of that. We've got a resident expert in having your beloved college program ripped from your heart in Erik to give us some context on this. And then I want to talk about, we've got actually major conference swimming championships underway. We had an American record set yesterday, and I thought maybe we could, because this is going to go on YouTube eventually, we could do the lifeblood of YouTube and do a reaction video. So we will all get on here. I'll play a video of Virginia breaking the American record in the 200 medley relay, and we'll just riff and react and stop the video, and Joel will say some stuff about the vibrations in the water, and people will not understand, but they'll think it's very intelligent, and that's what we'll do. Does that sound good to you?
Oh boy, does it ever! For a second there, when you said the lifeblood of YouTube, I thought we were gonna open up our 7-year-old's presents and stuff like that, and have reactions to toys. Start making some money like Ryan's toy review is.
Yeah, well, that is Erik apparently has again, one other reason we're not revealing his location is that he has a treasure trove. I think. Do you have that treasure trove of Speedo merchandise, Erik, at your place?
Yeah, it's slowly taking over my apartment to the point where I might need to get a storage unit. It's getting kind of out of control.
If not for that this would be wholly inappropriate for you and your job. We could do some suit unboxing. That would be, wow. Who's ever done that,
I'd have to get clearance from Speedo International out in the UK, and Don't know about that one. But yeah, it's pretty strange when your apartment is worth more than you are.
Right.
The street value of my apartment could probably cover all of my student loans.
Did you have to get some supplemental renters insurance?
My renter's insurance actually is high enough. It's still high enough to cover all the things that I have in my apartment, but I will have to cover Pac-12 conference here in Houston, both of them. So at that point, my apartment will probably be beyond my insurance coverage for at least a little while. So fun times.
Yeah, Pac-12. I guess that's soon.
Yeah,
Right?
Starts next week, Wednesday. Men's rolls right after it. Starts on Sunday. So 8 straight days of Pac-12 swimming at the U of H, provided everything still works.
Crazy times when the Pac-12 meet is in Houston, Texas. Anyway, let's get back to Iowa. Erik, I want you to lead off first because I guess I have this question for you. For people who don't know, you swam at the University of Nebraska. University of Nebraska no longer has a men's team. So I guess we can't make an apples to apples comparison here because, Nebraska didn't get rid of all swimming and then bring back just women. But, give people a little bit of context, like why are Iowa alumni still so fired up in this moment?
Well, the situation, the apples to maybe slightly different colored apples, organic to standard.
Yeah,
they were dropped in, early on, and we were just like, this is going to happen. This is how it's going to be. And then all of a sudden, with the season winding down, there's an announcement that the women are coming back, and a diehard alumni group has promised, put forth the funding to be able to save the teams, plural. And apparently the athletic department is not hearing it, which is mind-blowing considering that not everybody's on scholarship on that team. And then sometimes they lose sight of that. So a kid who's paying his way the entire way is bringing money into the university, and that's being completely discounted at one point and another. But yeah, it's a wild situation to have that support, to have all that funding available, and then not being able to utilize it and save that program and keep that very old tradition-filled program around. We were given 2 weeks to raise $5 million after the season was out. Once the NCAA invites came out, an eminent feeling of doom kind of crept through the pool deck at Devaney, and then all of a sudden we were brought into a room and told that the men's team was going to be cut, and because of Title IX, the women's team was not cut. That was actually shared to both teams at the same time. That Title IX saved the women's team, which is, I'm not anti-Title IX because I sat in a room and I watched my teammates' team saved from an athletic director that wanted to cut it. He cut the team in Washington. He came to us, he cut it. He moved to A&M, tried to cut it there. I don't know what his axe was to grind with swimmers. Maybe he got dunked on a lot in water basketball as a child. But, the reality is that loss saves that women's team. They got decimated because people left. They didn't like the situation. But, to see what's going on in Iowa, to see what happened out east, teams are dropped, that 80s are getting caught. It's like there's a lot of the MO for swimmers. They're smart. They get things. They do, not to say that any sports aren't, but when you have a lot of people doing the research and being like, hey, this doesn't line up with laws, 80s are retiring or quietly being fired because people are doing their due diligence. So I'd be curious to see what happens here in the next 2 months with this Iowa program. and if there's a pattern of ADs having issues. So,
by the way, just wild listening to you talk about that meeting. I don't know how I would feel if I was on Nebraska women's team and the leader of my athletic department said to me, basically, I wanted to get rid of you, but I couldn't. You know, it would not be terribly inspiring to me as somebody on the team to just go like, oh, okay, so only because a landmark federal law prevented you from, about gender equity, prevented you from doing this, did you not do it? If not, but for that, you would just like mercilessly get rid of us too.
And a bunch of them transferred, made that decision to transfer like in that moment. I mean, we had some solid girls who made NCAAs that just left because of that. So yeah, it was such a weird season because the whole staff was on deck early season, and then all of a sudden one day, anybody who wasn't implicated was still there, but everybody else was gone. It was literally over the course of a weekend, we went from a staff of 6 or 7 to a staff of 2 with a GA.
Wow.
And then it was just a weird zombie-like season, wondering what's going to happen for the entire 6 months.
Joel, I'm going to ask this question in a way that will guarantee that neither you or I will ever be employed in college swimming again. But, like my brand basically is saying things that make it harder for me to get employed. So I feel like this is totally on brand. Are most athletic directors
not only unhireable, but unlistenable to most swim coaches too. So you're hitting like both areas. That's great.
Yeah. Are most athletic directors just morons or what?
I think the crazy thing is how we always, because someone doesn't agree with us, they have to be stupid. You're like, well, what if we take the opposite? Like, what if they're pretty bright in the fact that like it seems like for athletic departments, you can have, for an AD, you can build your resume by hiring really great coaches and winning, getting a lot of facilities built, or being the axe man that just comes through and I'm just going to cut sports and then get fired to move on to another town because they're making so much money. It's like, I guess that's how I'm going to pad my stats. I've cut these 6 sports. Want me to come in and cut a few of yours? Hire me in, because like Erik said, he cut at Washington, cut at Nebraska, goes to A&M. I mean, that dude is making money just cutting stuff without having to do something else. So he might not be that dumb. I mean, figured out how to make money. I'm in the basement right now talking to you guys for free. How can that guy be dumber than me? Plus, with Erik's idea, like we're supposed to make $5 million in 2 weeks. Why the hell would I want to go back to swimming if I knew how to make $5 million in 2 weeks? Like shit, I'm just going to keep doing that.
Well, I do. I honestly, I did have a moment where, when the first wave of this most recent wave of cuts began, I mentally in my mind, I was just sort of like, don't raise this money for them. Because I think that it's very clear to me that there's a culture writ large among athletic directors that doesn't really value the sport of swimming and diving. We're just not seen as a valuable thing. There's a sort of class of athletic directors that looks at us as not even something of value, but something that has negative value, so that it is actually improving the value of their athletic department to get rid of swimming and diving. And I just think like part of me was like, don't fundraise, because you're just giving money to somebody who you're putting money into a system that is rigged in some ways against swimming. What's been really interesting about these programs coming back is that it's a completely different, like there used to be, you could count on every year, program gets cut, alumni start fundraising, they raise an impressive amount of money, and most of the time the athletic director ignores them anyway because still, it's not enough money. There's just, like as Erik said, $5 million in 2 weeks. It's an incredible amount to raise, and then sort of life goes on. This time around, it's been people digging through some muck and sort of being like, well, what's the justification for this decision really? And is it legal that the action this person has taken? And yeah, we've seen some athletic directors heads rolls. I wonder if, the fear of that kind of stuff is going to become a stronger motivator to not cut swimming, because you're going to have your whole sort of managerial past as an athletic director run over with a fine-tooth comb by the high-powered lawyer hired by some swimming alum. I guess for somebody who loves swimming, I guess I can only hope that's the case, that just puts a little bit of fear into the athletic directors. What do you think, Joel?
I think you're right. I think, for years we were all terrified of helicopter parents and stuff like that. Now it's like, it looks like it could be a boon, because like when I was swimming,
helicopter parents for when your program gets under threat.
Yeah, exactly. Because when I swam, all of a sudden be like, hey, our program got cut. My dad would be like, hey, good luck at McDonald's. I don't know how it's going to work out for you, but good luck. Now you got high-powered attorneys. You got people that are going to possibly sue. And if you dig deep enough, almost every department is going to be not compliant with Title IX. I mean, the majority of places are not. The only way really that you find out if someone's Title IX compliant or not is if someone inside the university calls in an airstrike on themselves. Right. Because the NCAA is not going to go looking for these things. It doesn't have the time. It doesn't have the resources to do that. And if they looked, they'll find everyone is basically in some aspect not compliant. And so now you've got parents, and you've not only got parents, but you've got parents that have access to social media. And so I think that one of the biggest fears an athletic department would have is if all of a sudden the student athletes unionized. And now they can kind of unionize in a sense through social media. All it takes is one parent on Twitter, one parent on Facebook. We're making a chat room. We're making a group. Hey, we can all afford a lawyer. And you can lawyer up and go through those records and find out, hey, you're not compliant with Title IX. I think the problem is I don't know if there's any real teeth to being non-compliant on a lot of these things. And so basically it's going to be a lot of press and a lot of pressure on like everyone from the Board of Regents to the Chancellor to everyone. So like everyone that has an ear of anyone that has an influence can start to exert pressure on this and make it very uncomfortable for an AD, especially when all of a sudden, hey, we can look at all these finances. How much did you pay off the last football coach or strength coach or whoever? Not saying with Iowa, with anyone. It's like, right. So listen, you're hemorrhaging money here, but you're going to save $50,000 here. And so I think a lot of times what it comes out is this is just for show. It looks like you're saving money, but you're not saving money.
Yeah, actually, in Iowa's case, I mean, they had that racist strength and conditioning coach who Urban Meyer just tried to hire to the Jaguars and had to fire him immediately, even though he said he did a lot of vetting on the process. So I wonder how much money they are still paying that guy, if any, in that particular situation. Eric, I want to read some. We invited Greg Earhart to be here on the podcast, and as usual, as with every other time I've invited him to come be on the podcast, he says he's too busy to come on. So because Erik's not here, I'm going to do some really compelling podcast stuff. I'm going to read his tweets out loud.
So like a really, really boring version of Jimmy Kimmel's mean tweets. This will be Erik's nice tweet.
I'm just going to read some Greg Earhart tweets and ask you guys to react to them. So this is in line with some of what I said earlier. So basically, you find out that I plagiarized the first part of my podcast from Greg Earhart. Sorry, Greg. On February 16th, I've never seen a group of alumni more upset at the reinstatement of the team. How can U of Iowa ignore Save Iowa Sports' offer to not only fund men's teams, but also start a new women's sports? This is in reference to the $2.5 million that's been raised by this organization, Save Iowa Sports. And if you look further down, maybe he's deleted something. But, there's been really, really good organization by people on the ground in Iowa. Erik, I wonder, do you think that, do you see anything that's really different about this particular sort of banding of alumni, this sort of cross-sectional, cross-sport stuff from previous efforts to save swimming programs?
The biggest difference is the connectivity amongst alumni. It's the internet and social media has changed this landscape dramatically. You guys, talked about saving sports or whatever. We got dropped in the spring of 2001. There was really not a whole lot of traction for even Facebook. I mean, MySpace was still, a big thing at that point. A lot of people were still using dial-up and had AOL email accounts.
I think Facebook was 4 years old. So
yeah. So I mean, it's such a different situation, as you all put it. The chat rooms, the support here and there, and just people becoming more enthusiastic about supporting these things because you're seeing in real time internet activism actually work, whether you are for or against some of the ways that it's being handled. People are seeing that, like, this can work, let's do this, let's get this done. The only thing that they're really up against, like the arbitrary deadlines and dollar amounts that are expected at any point, and the ADs are not required to listen to some of these ploys. They're only really required to listen to the law. We had $5 million in 2 weeks. That was arbitrarily 10 years worth of funding, $500,000 a year. So we had to make 10 years worth of funding, endow the program in 2 weeks. But yeah, it's such a strange, strange situation to be a part of. And I wanted to touch on one thing real quick from the last one. Yes, these ADs are smart, but they're not smart enough because they went after both men's and women's teams. If they really wanted to cut swimming at all, they never would have touched women's teams. This probably wouldn't have had nearly the traction had they not just blindly taken an axe to both sides. And once you do that, you end up running up against the law. So I think they're smart. They're just not in that moment making intelligent decisions as a very scrupulous AD. This reminds me of a book that I'm also reading right now called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And a lot of this stuff is playing out when it comes to people just making corporate decisions to downsize to make their dollars look better. So this is all short-term gains instead of long-term solutions, like finding ways to get these kids to come to the school, like supporting a swim team. So anyway.
I think you can see that, there's this is the last point I'll make before we move on to talking about some swimming. I mean, I think you can see that I don't really know. I mean, I guess I'm guessing at why athletic departments were started in the first place at universities, why we have this system where they're tied. But the original goal was, I think, to promote the college, promote the university, for people to be able to see it. And I think we've gotten very, 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 very far away from that. And it'd be really interesting for me to see, especially with this growing movement to pay athletes in Division I, quote unquote, revenue sports, whether that's going to be disastrous for swimming, whether that's actually going to be good for swimming because it changes the calculation on the other end. I know, like, probably most people think just because of the way things have gone in the last 20, 30 years that it will be bad. But there is a scenario under which it could change the calculation and maybe bring some sanity back to sort of the core mission of these athletic departments. I guess I'm a trained optimist, so that's what I hope for. All right, let's talk some swimming. SEC championships got underway yesterday. The ACC championships got underway. We got some relays in the water. Erik, I know you were without power. How much were you able to look at, and did anything stand out to you?
I was able to. I still had Meet Mobile, but I still had data, so I was able to at least check some of the results. that Virginia relay on that 2 medley was incredible. NC State wasn't, terribly behind either, just 0.6 behind, but just the splits coming off of that, where we're seeing 22 mids more and more on women's fly, and 21.5 is no longer anything for a woman to anchor. I mean, it's just we're seeing 23 threes out of 18-year-olds. I mean, it's just in the backstroke, in breaststroke, if you're not under 27, you're not a serviceable breaststroker on relays. It's crazy to see these things come through, where NC State's relay was not enough to win
right
at ACC. Like that, just looking at the splits and looking at these girls, these women swim the way they swim, you're just like, how is this not enough? It's exciting and mind-blowing all at the same time.
Joel, how about you? What I know you don't look at a lot of results, so I'm just going to sort of pull something out here, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just the cool thing is obviously just seeing how these times keep dropping, and I think you always kind of why is it happening like that? And I think part of it is just the evolution of the underwater aspect of this of all the events. I mean, you look back, for us it doesn't seem that long ago, but like 2000, you have Misty Hyman, like one of the ones really doing underwater work like that on the women's side, and now that's translated into like the sprints, the college events. I think that's everything in these is getting through, hitting the breakouts to be able to get that. And I think part of it is just the transformation of the sport into valuing the underwater component into the breakout. That's, I think, would push the breaststroke as much as it has. It's definitely pushing the butterfly as much as it has. And obviously it's, carried into the other strokes like that. So it's fun to watch, and it's just such a fun time of the season. It's nice to see these swims coming around after everything that's gone on before this, so it's great time of the year to watch.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to try something. I'm going to share my screen.
If this doesn't work, can Erik unbox at least one of the suits?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
yeah.
You guys seeing what I'm seeing?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to go down. We're going to watch this this relay on the YouTube. I guess I gotta do something like this. There we go. Get that in full screen. Let's see if we can get the. Oh God. All right, here we are. We're gonna have to cut this off for the audio version. Obviously, not going to be that interesting. Or you could follow along and watch your own.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so that'd be good.
As we talk through it here, we've got.
As a former backstroker, I love watching these women crush these underwaters.
Yeah, pretty incredible to just watch these, breakouts taking place so precisely. I know Jake Shackelford from our team and formerly swimming for Joel showed his kids this video last night just to sort of show them the role that underwaters are playing in the swimming landscape. All right, let's roll it. Beautiful once again. And I think that's So I think we've got UVA right here, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. This is NC State. This is Catherine Burkhoff.
Yep.
Here, who led off in 23.3. really set them up well in this relay. Let's watch as they get into it. Here's something fundamental. I know it's a little obscured by the flags, but something I joke with people that like a lot of people would do different things if they had a time machine. Mine is always, I would go back and find the first person who did that backstroke lunge finish, and stop them. Only because I think that this is like a technique that almost everybody tries, but 90% of people don't execute correctly. If you sort of imagine the finish you're seeing here on both both women, when they touch the wall, or they make that last lunge, the second their hand, gets in the same line as their body, it's on the wall. There's no like lunge and then finish. The lunge goes directly onto the wall as they go here. And NC State was a great relay exchange up at the top.
Crushed it.
Joel, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to see a lot of the stuff that's going on, but I think you're right on with that backstroke. It really is one of those things where I'd like to time out a lot more, where just kind of throwing in, making sure that you get that center mass driving through the center buoyancy, and then dipping the center buoyancy down to kind of accelerate like that. So, I mean, I get where the lunge is coming from, but obviously it's one of those things where when it hits, it's great. But like you said, what are the percentages? But I think, again, when you're going for greatness like this, you take that risk. But yeah, I think the big part is not letting the center buoyancy lift above the center mass and then driving it down, but instead keeping the center mass riding behind the center buoyancy and then dipping it at the last second kind of thing.
All right, let's watch what happens here on this breaststroke.
God, that pull out.
That was a really great pull out. I believe it's Wagner for UVA, who made up almost all the ground on that pull out. I'm kind of wondering if 15 meters is eventually going to get outlawed in breaststroke, and whether that's something we're going to see, because you're going to see more and more people pushing that distance, especially in men's races. What do you think, Erik?
I don't think so. As long as Japanese and South African breaststrokers are going past 15 meters, then it probably won't be banned.
Oh, what does that mean? Does that mean if it's American breaststrokers it will get?
I'm just saying rules are put in place when certain things are happening. There's been some odd consistencies and rule changes, and just saying.
By the way, shout out to my former boss, Courtney, right up here. Very easy to spot the 6'3" blonde lady watching the swimming. All right, here we go. Joel, I want to get your thoughts on something, not so much happening in this race. I would say it's not the most extreme example of this, but what do you think about the evolution in breaststroke where, probably 20 years ago, there was so much focus on distance per stroke. And now you have so many people that are just getting up to a really high stroke rate and just chugging strokes in breaststroke.
I think that's the cool thing about breaststroke is how different each of those races are. The 50 to the 100 to the 200, and kind of what they're doing with these swims. This is the first time I've seen this relay. I've seen the splits, but like watching how fast the women, like if you saw the dive in, how deep they're getting into the water, how long they're going to pull out, but how smoothly they're hitting the breakout and able to rebalance on that first stroke, because that's so critical. And you see that with, the difference between obviously a great swim versus a really good swim is just how quickly they can get onto that balance point of the first stroke. Because if they're off balance in a short course yard swim, the first three strokes are basically them trying to correct that one mistake. And so the way they hit and balance so quickly to the surface is amazing. And then you see that with those elite breaststrokers, like how they're able to keep their hips parallel with the surface of the water. And so that's part of that high tempo, is that they're not allowing their hips to drop down and create that imbalance. It's always the center mass is always driving in a straight line down the pool. It's not creating that wave that you used to see, where like a lot of breaststrokers for a little while were trying to mimic that wave breaststroke where the hands are coming out and creating that dive down and dive down. This, they're able to control the tempo of the race by controlling that amplitude of the wave, I think.
Wow. All right, let's see what that looks like here. I'm going to watch that breakout.
So yeah, right there in the middle, how well she's able to just get to the surface, get the hips parallel, and start driving forward. It looked like the other woman, she tipped back a little bit on that first stroke. It wasn't a lot, but it was a little bit.
Incredible watching this live. I mean, NC State still has a slight lead at this point. But I believe that's Cuomo in the water, and she just housed that second wall.
22.5.
Yeah.
And when the video is this kind of grainy, really just the only thing you can watch is the wake pattern and how the waves are going, and looking at like how the splash is going. So you see like the splash was going straight up. That means like they've somehow kind of lost connection with the water. It's kind of like a bowling ball dropping in the water. The water's going to shoot up. Versus like a dolphin fin, when it hits the water and pushes down, you see the splash going in a different direction. And so just in this one instance, obviously it's hard to tell exactly. It's grainy, but you see the difference at the top of the screen, how that splash is going straight up versus the woman in the middle, how again that splash is staying focused. So it's not energy getting lost into the air, it's energy getting transferred in staying in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good observation. You can see that, there's constant water pressure there in the middle of the pool for Cuomo as she swims this butterfly, and she's just getting so much power from that. All right, I'm really curious to see Kate Douglas here on the end for Virginia. Another interesting thing about her is, I think you commented on this too, Joel, when we were talking about Sjöström. Kate Douglas to me is another one of those athletes who's super strong, but kind of like a wiry, strong athlete. And I haven't actually watched a lot of her racing, which is why I'm excited to see how she does this 50 free here on the end.
Yeah, so you look at that. Yeah. That's everything. It's like if you can't hit that, you can't swim in college.
Yeah, and you said it's just a great, a great relay exchange. Not only in terms of timing, I think we can tend to fixate on timing, but just the angle of attack. If you go back a little bit I'm going to put this in. I'm really going to get fancy and go into slow-mo here. Turn the volume up so we don't. A great job jumping out. And then, very good entry. You can see she's actually, even though she's going to go far, she's pretty close to the surface of the water. And she's going to come up. I think so often swimmers, when they're trying to go far underwater, they get really deep. And then when they try to come back up to the surface, it's almost like a submarine, coming up, that the front part of their body comes up and then the legs follow. You can see like this beautiful line that she's on. And just this
can see when she entered the water, how well, again, the center of mass lined up behind the center of buoyancy to drive in the water, so that the entry splash pattern was really nice. It was kind of like you see a diver when they kind of rip the entry. She pretty much ripped the entry, even though, again, like a diver's going in, completely perpendicular. Here, she kind of rips the entry so that water kind of sucks in behind her a little bit. And, so she's out obviously underneath the wave that the butterfly brought in. But now, like you said, you can see that how, again, that line is getting closer to the surface. You see a little bit of drag below the hips. But again, part of that is she's going so fast. You're going to get that right at the surface, and that's how she's able to hit this breakout so cleanly.
Yep. Whoa. I mean, to be that tall and that long and swim with that much power it's incredible. Erik, final thoughts?
She's not gonna have breakouts like that. You know, you guys are saying all the right stuff. I mean, just watching it and just in total awe as a former coach and athlete, and just thinking about the precision and accuracy for which they're hitting every mark on that. I mean, Kylie went 20.8 on that anchor for NC State, and 20.8 wasn't enough, which still, again, is mind-blowing compared to the 20.6 from Kate Douglas. I mean, I love it. I think it's fantastic. And I'm hoping these videos are utilized in the right way by age group coaches. You talked about Shackelford, using it with kids. Like, these are the things that are worth sharing, not swim fly like X or swim freestyle like B, but here's this transition from underwater to on top of the water. These make sense for everybody in a physical sense. So YouTube is just ripe with so many opportunities to share the right things with younger kids and get them excited about trying to be fast.
Yeah, so everybody, this is our first attempt at doing this. If you like watching this kind of thing, send feedback. I want to just wrap up. I'm already heading to my final point. So actually, let me see, Joel, do you have a final word this week that you want to give before I roll to the finish?
Not to go back to the depressing topics of sports getting cut, but it's interesting when I talk to other coaches, people that might not have coached college or something like that, we don't always understand what the purpose of a sport is within a university. And so a lot of times, like, well, that's a winning program. Why would you cut a winning program? It's like, when I coached, again, I was at Division III, and obviously poor job at that, only getting one national champ, as you pointed out, was winning had nothing to do with me keeping my job. It was basically like, one was making sure gender equity numbers were balanced. Two was making sure that the kids aren't getting in trouble on campus and maintaining a good GPA to help the GPA of the athletic department. And like, three would be national presence. 4, 5, 6, 10 down the line would be like winning anything, really. We had to do more to kind of balance things out. And I think the interesting thing is how, like you said earlier, the universities, obviously you have an athletic program to enhance the university, but somewhere along the line, the university and the athletic department, especially at the Division I level, have become two separate entities. And I think that's where the financing has come in, where for what looks like is saving money on the athletic end is actually losing money on the university end. So when you drop swimming, most of those swimmers aren't on full scholarship, so they're paying something in the university. They're paying books in the university. They might be paying dorm fees in the university. A free tuition is not actually costing anyone anything unless you're at 100%, every class, every dorm, everything is filled. And most universities aren't at that level. It's just it's weird accounting, where it's like it's not an actual business, but they pretend like they're running in a business, because the athletic department will look at a scholarship as a loss, but the university, it's a gain. They're making money in the food courts. They're making money in the dorm rooms. And I think that's where sport has gone wrong, is the university and the athletic department need to get housed together. And you see that more in Division III levels, where they understand the importance. Again, like a small Division III college, maybe it's got 2,000 students in it. They have a team of 40 athletes. That's paying for the coach. It's paying for a lot of different bills, because those 40 athletes wouldn't be at that university if it weren't for that swimming program. And I think that's where the math needs to kind of get reckoned together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that that's sort of what I was referring to earlier when I say, like, sometimes it feels like the rules are stacked against us. There's actually been a system that has devalued swimming, even when you look at the dollars and cents of it. Erik?
Oh, it's been an interesting 24 hours to say here. So as far as like really deep thoughts, there wasn't a whole lot of it. I was trying to figure out how it was going to make dinner without electricity or gas. So my deep thoughts kind of escaped me. But the one thing that I can think of that came to mind was just that transition from super suits to not, and just how people took that personally in the right way. It was like, I swam this fast with this, I can do this, changing the perception of how they dealt with things, and watching these relays and watching these times come through, and seeing that there clearly isn't a drop in performance due to what we've been dealing with this pandemic. Now, these programs have been taking the right steps and they've had access to water, but the whole traditional, you need all of this time kind of stuff really kind of just got thrown into a big question mark. Is it really? Like, a lot of these people didn't have access to water from April through the summer, and yet we're seeing American and NCAA records being broken here at ACCs, and it's just another one of those instances where it's throwing this is the way it's always been out the window. So it's really fantastic to see what we're seeing already out of ACCs and SECs on the women's side, and it really does just goes to show that people are resilient, and if they have the right people around them saying the right things, that they can achieve those goals with or without optimal conditions. So
It is really
looking forward to it.
Yeah, it is really amazing how the progress just moves forward. It seems like there's nothing that can stop the train of swimming performance from just getting better and better and better. Seemingly not a global pandemic, not as you referenced, the change in suit technology from one thing that was clearly very advantageous to another. My final thought as I'm watching this video is actually go back to our discussion of Sjöström. I realized after we did that video that I'd been holding back from getting excited about the Summer Olympics. Like, somewhere in the back of my mind, so many things have been canceled and so many things have been postponed that emotionally, like, I was just sort of on guard that, this thing that you look forward to so much every year, it's not going to happen. So don't get excited about it. And weirdly, thinking about Sjöström not performing at her best, or thinking about, the competition she's going to be up against at the Olympics, I started to get excited. And so that's why I was really happy to watch this video too, because I think, I had been on guard, like, are these conference championships going to happen? Is there going to be an NCAA meet? Is there going to be all this sort of competition that, as a fan of the sport of swimming, I really look forward to on a yearly basis? And, I guess my tradition is that I'll like to finish with like an optimistic message. So I'm just really excited to be watching really fast swimming again, to know that there's a good chance of it happening here in the near future. And hopefully there'll be more great swimming videos for us to talk on. Guys, thank you so much for coming. And thanks to whoever fixed Erik's power. And no thank you to whoever didn't cut Joel's power. But,
Yeah.
Maybe next week we'll see what we can do. All right.
Fingers
crossed. All right. Bye.
Bye.
See you. Thanks.